So you all remember our story last week. King Darius, what was it happened? Does anybody recall?
Like the lion.
Yeah, the lion's den.
Yeah.
And so when he realized what these guys had done, what was his initial reaction towards himself?
He opened the window and prayed as regular.
Yes.
What he did.
Daniel opened the door so that everybody could see him. What was King Darius's response when he realized he'd been tricked into signing the law? Do you remember what he thought about himself?
Sad. No, I thought he was sad. Oh, then
He was
go
unhappy.
ahead.
It was something negative towards himself.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he was upset with himself, like, oh man, I can't believe I fell for that.
Yeah, he felt some guilt.
Yeah, felt some guilt because, and we talked a little bit last week about how much he liked Daniel, and then he stayed up all night. And then what did he do when the sun came up the next morning?
He ran to the lion's den.
Yeah, ran to the lion's den and
called out.
Cry out.
Yeah, and you okay? The God whom you continually serve, has he been able to rescue you?
Yeah.
From the lions. And Daniel's like,
Yep.
We're all good.
Amen.
Yeah, we're all good. And the king's response was,
oh,
happy, joyful.
Yeah, he was overjoyed.
Overjoyed. Okay.
And then those that had tried to trick the king, what happened there?
They and their wife and kids got thrown in.
Yeah.
And
before they hit the ground.
That's probably not a verse you want to share with the kids before they go to bed. So here's a verse we want to learn before you go to sleep tonight.
I don't know. I think little boys would like it.
Oh, they would. They would love it.
They'd probably add that in if we didn't.
Yeah, and even before they hit the ground, the lions had consumed them. And so that leads us to our story this week. So then King Darius wrote to all peoples, nations, and languages that are around the world. May peace be multiplied to you. Now, as for those who are in the dominion of my kingdom, I'm issuing a decree that all men should fear and tremble before the God of Daniel, because he's the living God and he's steadfast forever. His kingdom is a kingdom that shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall endure till the end. He is the God who delivers and rescues, and he works signs and wonders in heaven and on the earth. He's the one who delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. And Daniel was successful in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. And that's our story from God.
I thought you said it was short.
It's 4 verses.
Well,
okay.
Well, very long verses.
Equal to 40. Okay.
Yeah, 4 verses, but a lot of dialogue. And that's what makes the difference.
Yeah.
Is if you have a lot of dialogue. And so
it's a long story.
And especially this morning early, I did one story and then I had to shift gears and go to this story. But fortunately I had some time and I went to the cemetery and recorded this story for my YouTube channel. So, but let's kind of go through this. So then King Darius, what did he do?
He wrote a
decree.
Yeah, well, even before he wrote it, he wrote to all,
Nation, people, and language.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
to all people, nations, and language of,
The whole world.
yeah, the whole earth. May
Wow.
peace,
Peace.
Peace be with you.
With you.
yeah, may peace be multiplied to you. And then he says, for the ones who are in my,
My jurisdiction or whatever.
basically the dominion of my kingdom, I issue a decree that all men should do what?
Fear
Worship
and tremble.
of fear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fear and
Fear.
tremble before the God
Of
Daniel.
Of Daniel.
of Daniel. Exactly. Because he is the
King.
living God,
The living God.
and steadfast forever. And then it says his kingdom is one that
will never end.
he says that next. Exactly. He says his kingdom is one
His-
that won't be destroyed.
Destroy.
I don't remember.
His dominion is
Well,
Is
kingdom and
forever.
dominion shall endure until the end. Exactly.
Yeah.
Eventually.
And then he does something.
Who God does something?
Yes, God does something.
Yeah.
He delivers
Oh.
and
Okay.
I'm gonna write this down.
he delivers and rescues, right? And then he does
Signs and wonders.
signs and wonders. Where?
Yay, Vivian.
Yay.
In heaven and on
In
earth.
heaven,
And
And
on earth.
yeah, in heaven and on earth. And he's the one that what did the king just see?
I don't remember.
He's the
God
one that
David, Daniel.
delivers. No.
who
delivers
delivered Daniel
Daniel.
from the
Okay.
power of the
And the
lion.
lions.
And then there's that one little half verse and kind of a summation. And Daniel was,
Find favor? I don't know.
he was successful. So it's
Oh,
almost
successful,
found favor. Yeah, almost found favor. He was successful
Yeah.
during the reign of,
Cyrus.
of Cyrus the Persian and
Darius.
Darius. Exactly.
Darius.
Yeah. So, this is just such a,
This is really hard.
This is really. That's like a list.
there are a lot of lists. There are several small lists. So I'm going to cheat just a little bit and let's kind of walk through this again, thinking how we can go through this. All right. Because it starts out, first of all, who's he talking to?
Talking to the people.
Everybody.
Yeah, everybody. Right. So he starts off by, hey, everybody, peace be multiplied to you. Right. And then he kind of tones it down to who?
His
To
people.
his people. His
The
domain.
people under the dominion of his kingdom, right? That's a strange way to say it. But then later on, we see kingdom and dominion mentioned again, but talking about God, right? So I've got that first layer. I'm issuing this decree to everybody who's in the dominion of my kingdom. And then he switches to talk about God's dominion and kingdom, right? So that's kind of how, those are kind of the mental hooks.
Okay, the world, my dominion, God.
Right. So he goes, whole world, and he goes, but for those who are under the dominion of my kingdom, I'm issuing a
Decree.
decree, right? That all men should do something.
Fear and tremble.
Fear the God of Daniel.
The God of Daniel, exactly, right? Who is what kind of God?
Loving or something. It's a nice word.
Dead God?
He is
Say
loving.
delivers and or something.
Oh, God.
He is the living God. He starts off by going, he's the living God
Living God.
who is steadfast forever. right? So a living God who is faithful and trustworthy, right? So you just see that stability, right? And then it talks about, it switches to his kingdom and then his dominion. So it almost flip-flops, because before he's talking about all those who are under the dominion of my kingdom, then it switches to God's kingdom and
Dominion. Okay.
right. So if that just kind of helps you, for me, those are the things I need to hang my mind on. So the kingdom of God will never be
Destroyed.
destroyed. The dominion of God will last how long?
Forever.
To the end.
It actually, it's
Oh, to
interesting
the end.
the way he puts it. Will endure till
The end.
The end.
yeah, endure till the end, which is kind of a strange way to put that, right? And then it's talking about kingdom and dominion, and then it switches to what he does personally, right? He performs.
Signs and
Well,
wonders.
he does. What did he do for Daniel?
He delivered him from the lions.
He is a God who delivers and
Delivers.
rescues.
Rescues. Okay,
Rescue.
delivers and rescues.
Who
Perform-
Signs and the
and
wonders.
signs and wonders where?
In
On heaven and
on
on
earth.
Heaven and on earth. Then he
Yeah.
kind of sums up. He's talked about general rescues and delivers, and now he goes, he's
More
the
specific.
one that did what?
Delivered Daniel.
Deliver and rescue.
Rescued Daniel
Delivered Daniel from the
from the
lions,
lions'
then
mouth.
Lions.
power,
mouth of lion.
Power.
which is
Power.
interesting. That's again. So when I'm looking at a story like this, there's several odd things in this story, right? Because I would say he delivered from the mouths of the lions, but Darius said
Power.
he delivered Daniel from the power of the lions, right? And then at the very end, we kind of have a summation of whom?
Daniel was successful in the king two names. I forgot the two names.
The first
Yeah.
one is the one that's writing this, Darius, and so it's in
Oh.
the order of Darius, and then
Darius,
of Cyrus,
okay.
the Persian,
Oh yeah.
Cyrus.
who's going to
Cyrus
come,
and Darius.
who's going to come later, right?
So how does he write this when he doesn't know Cyrus is coming?
Well, yeah, it's interesting. That's one of the
Did he
problems
know?
people have with the book of Daniel is the fact that Cyrus is named.
Well, did he come around before Darius died or after Darius died? But,
Yeah, he did.
so he knew that he was maybe in line.
Yeah,
or-
he served under Darius somehow. So,
Okay.
and we're not sure who actually
He knew.
wrote
Edit
the
this.
book of Daniel. I don't think, and I have to look at that. Because I was just dealing with this chapter, I didn't do the full book study the way I normally would do if I was preaching the passage. But so Darius just saw Daniel delivered, and then he dealt with the guys that turned against Daniel, and now he's writing to all peoples, nations, and languages on the whole earth. Peace be multiplied to you, and for those in the dominion of my kingdom, I'm issuing a decree that all men should fear and tremble before the God of Daniel. He
So-
is the living God who is steadfast forever.
So basically he's saying, forget what I wrote before. This is an amendment to that.
Yeah. This is a new law of the Medes and the Persians. I hadn't even thought about that. It's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
You're
like,
that's
oops.
really good. Yeah.
I was just kidding.
Well, I'm curious. Does this tell us anything about the impact of Daniel's deliverance on Darius? And what do y'all see there?
Repeat that again, please.
Does this show us anything about the impact of Darius watching Daniel being delivered from the lions?
Well, yeah. It totally gave him a huge aha moment as to who God is and his power and his care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Vision. Yeah.
Well, I find it interesting. He starts off by speaking to all peoples, nations, and languages, right? On the whole earth. But he says to them, may peace be multiplied to you.
Mhm.
If you remember from the introduction from last week, which I know is a while back, so Darius was a peaceful ruler who just wanted everybody to get along. Is that how
Maybe
he came
not.
to power?
I don't remember.
Yeah, he
So
came to
he was a
power
wo-
many tekel upharsin. You know, that was the reign before him. He was attacking when they brought Daniel out of mothballs, and they were having the big party, and the hand wrote on the wall, right? And King Darius was the one who's like, yeah, we're coming in, we're kicking butt and taking names, right? And so you have this guy who's a conqueror who took this kingdom by force, but now he's going, may peace be multiplied to you.
Wow.
So I
What
mean, what might we learn about Darius from the fact that he's, I mean, it looks like he might have had somewhat of a change.
Well, for me, I see more can I ask another question? What can we learn about God? Because Darius could have said, oh, been super fearful of God in regards that he hunkers down in his home and he doesn't, what I mean? Or still rejected who God was. So
Okay.
it seems like there was quite a work in his heart to be able to see that this is a God not to be reckoned with, one, and that he would like to see, people respond the same way he is. So offering them peace, wishing peace on them is one way to do that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I see that. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I like that. So he's offering peace to, to the world, apparently holding a Coke, like to the world of song. That's only for old people who can remember these old commercials.
I remember.
But yeah, I'm dating myself, right? So, but then he says, for those who are under the dominion of my kingdom, here's the decree. You're going to fear and tremble before the God of Daniel. Okay, that's just how do you enforce that, right? But before, nobody can pray to any God but Darius, right? And now you're going to fear and tremble before the God of Daniel. It's a command. So I'm curious, what might that look like? I mean, how do you?
Well, it's interesting because this God is not a God that you're allowed to build little statues to. So you can't go out and say you got to show up at this shrine or this spot. It's not a place that commands those kinds of things. There's a temple. Only the Jews are compelled to go to that temple. So this is really more of a suggestion.
Strong suggestion.
It's a strong recommendation, but like you said, it's not going to be enforceable if you do it according to the way that this God desires that it be done
Okay.
by the peoples that are not circumcised,
Okay. All right.
which is, he's not a God of compulsion.
Mm.
Well, I'm curious. Do you see that Darius reckon the Darius Daniel thing is killing me? So I'm just you know, it just confusing me desperately. But do you see that Darius understands the difference between God and the God of compulsion? I mean, does it seem like he's okay? You're going to worship him or else, or you're going to have fear and tremble or else.
Maybe he's just stating a fact. You are going to,
Hmm.
you know, whether you want to or not, you will.
Okay. All right.
I don't
Yeah.
know. Somehow, at some point, which is true,
Yeah.
inevitably.
Well, fear and trembling. I mean, let's take a moment and sing some of the praise songs having to do with fear and trembling that are in our hymn books.
Fear and tremble.
Kind of hard to
I'm sure
think
there's
of,
some.
right? Yeah, I'm sure there are some, but it's
Holy, holy, holy.
yeah. That's the first one I thought of.
Okay.
But when you think of fear and trembling, do you think of worship?
It's more like a judgment.
Hmm.
I think it's a really deep encounter. It's usually not the first encounter. You've got to have something like what Darius has just had, which
Okay.
is, wow, I just saw what this God can do to
Mhm.
the lions. And the peoples have not had that. Yesterday we're doing the story of Peter and the fish, and you know, Peter falls at Jesus' feet because he has an awareness because of a personal thing that's just happened.
Oh, okay. The net. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's kind of like
Oh,
Darius wants to share his personal experience, but it's a little hard to see how that's going to work for all these peoples who are just kind of hearing about it.
Yeah. Don't we?
no, I just realized what you mean by Peter and fish.
Okay.
That one. Okay.
And
What
there
else?
are some psalms though that talk about coming to his presence with fear and
Oh,
trembling.
yes.
You know,
Yeah.
a lot,
Yes.
not just some, a
Yeah.
lot.
Right.
But it's always, you know, magnified with his glory and with his care.
But my question would be, Marlee, how often do you sing those in your church services?
No,
Yeah. It's just not, it's not what we do.
it's
Right.
not pretty.
And it's not fun. Right. So here comes it. So this was the decree: all men shall fear and tremble before Daniel's God.
Mhm.
But seems like like for me, when I came to Christ, it was with fear and trembling, knowing that who God is, and whether I did or not, he was God. And so I think that fear and trembling, if you approach God in the aspect that he has all power, he's omnipotent,
Yeah.
yet he wants a relationship with us somehow, that's twist your brain around.
Yeah.
And but it does appreciate and help me appreciate more of his character.
Yes, most definitely. Yeah, Johnny.
Yes, sir. I think he's talking more about respect.
Mm.
Like fear and tremble and like have respect toward him.
Mm-hmm.
Like don't mess around with him.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, let me
Yeah.
ask another question, because this is I'm gonna throw a wrench in the whole works. Right.
Right.
So fear and tremble before my God. Is that what he says?
No.
Before Daniel's God,
Yeah.
the God of Daniel.
Huh.
Does he say before my God?
Nope.
It
Daniel's
says
God.
before the God of Daniel, right?
Oh, I misquoted on purpose.
Tricked us. Before the God of Daniel,
So
Right.
what could he have said?
his God.
Our God.
Oh, our God.
So he's not dismissing that there's other gods,
Or,
really.
or the God of Daniel. I mean, it's not like it's Daniel's God. It's the God of the people of Daniel. So it's not the God of Israel. It's a little odd. It's like before the God of one of my ministers that I really like.
I think maybe he's relating them. I mean, Daniel's who he knows. So it's maybe he means that, but doesn't say that.
Well, I think it's a little dangerous to say the God of, one of my subjugated peoples.
Right.
So then it gets really weird when you go, the God of,
Yeah.
my minister I really like, the one I didn't kill eventually.
Well, and I wonder, and please, I don't know the answer to this question. Okay, so I'm not being the benevolent professor here. I don't have an answer in the back of my mind, and I'm digging around to see if you guys can find the secret knowledge that only I have. But so I'll just put it out there bluntly. I'm not real good at subtleties.
Really?
Do you think Darius knew the Lord as his personal God?
I'm thinking about Jacob and his father Isaac in Genesis 28. I'm going to, take you as my God. But before that, he's his father's God.
Okay, yeah.
Darius feels like a guy who's gone right up to the edge.
What do you mean?
Like he's not quite there, but he's like as close as you can get without making the commitment. Maybe.
I have to read more
He's always
chapters.
felt to me like I really admire this God. I'm really drawn to him. I have so much respect for this man who followed him, but can't quite cross over into the line of this is my God and I want all of you to follow him too.
I feel like maybe back then, like your God also has a strong tie to where you're from. Like if you're from this place, then you worship this God. I can relate that in my culture. Like if you go to Taiwanese, Christianism, they'll be like, well, that's not what we do. That's Western people's religion.
Yeah.
Although, like, but then for Darius, he has witnessed such a great miracle. He probably should have crossed that line.
Well, now it's interesting because he's not just telling, he's making a decree that people recognize that Daniel's God is real and powerful. Right? But do you see a piece missing in what he's saying?
Yeah, he doesn't say, and I am going to fear and tremble before him. I think maybe he meant that, but he didn't really say that. Do as I do, not just as I say. But,
wow. Yeah.
So,
but it's a decree to the people, so he does not need to include himself.
That's true.
Well, I mean, do you see here in the story that he believes God has power?
Yes. Yes.
Do you see that he believes that God's kingdom is eternal in contrast to his kingdom?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, does it seem like he recognizes his kingdom is, for lack of a better term, temporary?
Yes.
But is there any indication that he has made this a personal thing for him? And again,
not yet. Not yet. I don't know I mean, I forget the rest of the story, but I don't think he ever does. But
Yeah.
It's
on his way. First steps.
Is it a favor to Daniel? Because he has caused Daniel to potentially suffer shame.
Mhm.
You know,
Mm.
even if you get rescued from the lion's den, you still, you know, it's kind of like the accusation was made. Do people really know what the accusation was? The presumption is that people seem to know are going to know who Daniel is, seem to have heard this story. The story preceded of the lion's den precedes the declaration. Since he makes reference to it, is this a way to restore, to also give confidence that, you know, I've had a lot of war and brought together this kingdom, and I also just slaughtered a bunch of my top people,
Yeah.
which is an internal. So I've been externally violent and internally violent, but it's all good.
Mm.
I don't mean that to erase
No.
something personal, but to say politicians will be politicians.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So he's saving face too, maybe.
Yeah, saving face and saving Daniel's face.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and
I'm sorry, but he can't ignore what happened. People know about it, so he has to acknowledge it somehow.
well, I mean,
Yeah, you can't just wipe out a bunch of your top
Yeah.
your top, and that meant that these people were
Evil.
internally plotting against that circle. And that's a very dangerous, you don't want to think that the people at the top, yes, they can vie for power, but you don't want to think of that as an unstable circle in a large kingdom. That's not good.
well, you know, I'm curious. In the first part of the story, we you know, see the whole fear and tremble before God. That you know, we talked about what an interesting way to put that. That, you know, it's obviously, we talked a little bit about how that's obviously worship, right? In some ways. Today, I mean, do you see that fear and trembling before God would still be a proper response to who God is?
Sure. Yes.
Absolutely.
So,
It's definitely, I recently have this conversation with a person who maybe grew up in a Catholic home. And someone shared like Proverbs 31 or something. At the end of it, like she fears the Lord, and then you know, this person, she's a woman, so she was like really offended by that word. She's like,
Really?
why do I have to fear God? You know.
Oh.
And then I'm like, and then I think it also for me, like, it is hard to explain. But then it really, like some of you were sharing, it really takes a personal experience to realize, oh my God, I fear God. And it's not the fear that I used to know.
right. I've been in one extended, and I'll call it a revival, but I hate to use that term because that does not mean, to most people, it doesn't mean what I experienced. It's not like a revival meeting. We actually had a revival, and a revival broke out, right? The presence of God was so strong in the church that you could not walk up to the altar. That as you went to the altar, you were forced to your knees. It wasn't, there wasn't any choice. And then again, about 6 years ago, we had some students at a local Christian college, Asbury University, which is where an actual revival broke out in the late 60s. And we had some students call us and said, hey, chapel started at 10 o'clock this morning. It was 2 o'clock in the afternoon at this point. And they said, chapel is still going on. And this is what happened before. And so they said, we really need you guys to come and be praying. And so my wife and I jumped in the car and we drove to the campus, which was, 15 or 20 minutes away. And parked in the guest parking. And as I was walking up to the auditorium where the students were gathered, instantly, as I got within, walking distance, probably 50 feet of the building, instantly I was filled with awe of who God was. I was filled with an awareness of how holy he was. And I was instantly convicted of some things that I would have argued with you, Phil. I'm going to use an expression, Donghui, I'll explain it, till I was blue in the face, that was not sin. But suddenly I recognized that something I thought that was okay, it wasn't a bad thing based on the standards of the world, but based on God's standard it was. Turning blue in the face means that it's almost like I'm holding my breath until my face turns blue.
I can imagine. Yeah.
But the holiness of God, I was the word terror and awe and fear all kind of wrapped together in my understanding of the person of who God was. And I recognized that even though I'm forgiven, I still recognize my sin nature is right there waiting to pop up. It was it was instant, instant. And so as we went in to go pray, I was just sobbing, just absolutely broken before God.
There's a cleansing in that too.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely.
Cool.
Well, how might this little complicated story help you in the future? What do you see in this passage that could help you as you walk with the Lord?
I was reminded that when I help others to know God, I'm also need to pay attention to my own relationship with God, right?
I thought you were gonna say help others to get to know God. So I need to be thrown into lion's den.
Oh. Well, sometimes it feels like we are. I was just telling my friend a story. I like to do the story from James chapter 1, verses 2 through 7 about counting it all joy.
Okay.
Count of various trials.
Suffering.
And why would James tell them that? Why didn't he say, I'm going to pray he takes away your suffering, or just buck up and get over it?
Yeah.
Instead, he gives them a path to maturity. And so I even think of Daniel down there. He could have been trembling with fear, but he trusted God, and I'm sure it matured him somewhat too. But I think even in Darius, there was that understanding was a form of spiritual maturity. So anyway, in myself, not looking at any trials in my life as woe is me, take it away, but learning to trust and see that he is all powerful. He could take it or he could leave it, but regardless, he's God. And respecting that.
I worked with some people for a while that I just sort of said, let me be like Daniel, and you all do your political things, and let me just outlast y'all.
Yeah.
And I did outlast some of them in their little bureaucratic reigns. But Daniel just, he stays the course. And I see this as, yeah, some of the leaders get it, some don't get it at all. But there's Daniel. And then, I mean, we know that all of this is related to those magi of unspecified number going up all those years later.
There weren't just 3?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
With high quality gifts,
Mm-hmm.
inflation hedges.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you guys. This story is in Daniel chapter 6, verses 25 through 28. So it's only 4 verses.
You keep saying that.
Well,
It's a short story.
after I dealt with it a little bit, I was concerned. I'm not going to lie, because I knew I couldn't focus on this story because I had to do the Genesis story this morning first. And I don't know about you guys. I can't work on 2 stories at the same time. My brain just doesn't, my ADHD kicks in, squirrel. And so, as soon as I was done, as soon as I clicked off this morning, I instantly started working on this story. And by the time I went to the cemetery today and videoed the story, I was pretty surprised how well I had it, down. And so if you find those hooks,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of break the story down in your head, because he's dealing with everybody, then he's dealing with those in the decree, then he's talking specifically about who God is, then he's talking about God's kingdom, and then he talks about how Daniel was delivered, and now Daniel, it ends with Daniel being successful. So there is a flow there. It's just harder. It doesn't just pop out. You've got to dig to find it, right? But
Yeah.
a
Good
pretty
job.
cool story. And I'm not, I don't know the answer to my question. And 1 minute I'm going, yeah, Darius didn't know the Lord, and the other I'm going, I think he converted and became a believer, and I guess I'll know when we get to heaven, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But just an interesting story. So, all right, well, I'm going to stop recording here.